Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, teaching, education, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by the copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. That's it. Your counter shot. This is the House of Truth. I'll talk boxing and other styles of fighting, along with anything else that might come up from a societal standpoint or anything else. Sometimes it gets hot or controversial. That's okay. You can leave, you can stay in. I prefer you to stay. We learn from each other. I want to comment on the fight from yesterday between obviously Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. First, I need to congratulate Terence Crawford for fighting a perfect fight, basically. And also, I'm going to give props to Errol Spence Jr. because he's a warrior. You know, he took a lot of punishment. He stayed in. He would not have quit. He would have probably died in there had the ref not stopped it. His corner probably should have stopped it a little bit sooner. That's a big question mark. Not sure what was going on, but at any rate, all I want to do is go over a few things because I'm not surprised at what happened, and I'll explain why. I predicted round 11 for Crawford knockout, and I'll explain why. I predicted round 11, a round 11 knockout as opposed to something sooner, and why I thought it would have been a bit more of a war than it was, and it was a little bit of a war, but it became really more of a massacre, than an actual war. If you look at my prediction, the prediction that I had put up, I think the morning of the fight or something, I had certain things that I had mentioned that were going to be, critical points in this whole situation. So I'll just give a quick synopsis of what I went over there. But here's the thing: I wasn't surprised at what Crawford did because I have often talked about the physical characteristics as well as the just the mental game and psychological profile, really, if you will. But look, Crawford is tough and he's mean, but at the same time, the guy's got a heart. Don't take the guy's meekness that he shows at times for being weak, like so many of these fellas in the YouTube streets did. They were looking at him at the press conferences and at the weigh-in saying he was all nice and he was scared and he was looking this way and that way, and that's not true. See, when you're confident, you don't have to go in and act like it's something more than what it is. And it's strange because the same guys that would say things like that would say that he's a bully and he's going to get bullied. So they can't even make up their minds. But my point is, the Crawford was pretty meek and he was pretty. I think he was very even keeled during this entire build up to the fight, as well as Errol Spence Jr. And so I think they both, there were some hot moments, true enough, but I think they both deserve, respect for trying to maintain a certain type of dignity. And because they always want us to go at each other as black people, as Crawford had stated. I need to mention that. But anyway, getting to this real quick. I'm not surprised because, like I say, I understand Crawford and I understand what I'm looking at. Only reason why I predicted round 11 and for it not to be a fight that looked the way it looked was because something I mentioned in my video. You can go back and look at it if you want to, but obviously you don't have to. I mentioned the X factor. That X factor being that Floyd Mayweather had sparred Errol Spence Jr. and it was supposed to be this pretty big deal, and how Errol Spence had done so well and so on and so forth. So the big X factor for me was how much more does Errol Spence really have? And I don't know, and I didn't see the sparring. So it left a lot up in the air for me, and I had to make adjustments in my thinking based on that. I didn't have to, but I chose to. But at the same time, I still recognize the strength and power and abilities of Crawford, which are way off the scales, if you will. But so because of that unknown, I gave Spence a little more than he deserved in certain areas. Anyway, the bottom line is this: I measured the fight, and I measured my prediction just based on certain physical attributes, going into the fight, like the weigh-in and things like that, the tailor shape. But then I threw down 10 physical characteristics, I guess, as well as intellectual. Most of them physical, though, characteristics, and did a comparison, because at the end of the day, we have to look at that. And the psychological stuff and, the intangibles, other intangibles like how much gut do you have and so on and so forth, those things play out differently. However, I'm going to real briefly go down the line. And I'm going to run this in slow motion briefly to show what I'm talking about when I'm mentioning these things and why it's important. So really quickly, the height, reach, weight, age, number of fights, number of wins, losses, KOs. That was one category I looked at, and I gave advantages to whoever had the advantage in those areas. Well, based on all those factors, the height, reach, weight, and all that, there was really only one standout, and that would, a lot of people are going to think, what, height, weight? No, those weren't important because they're about the same height, it's about the same weight. However, that reach does matter, and the only reach advantage obviously was to Terence Crawford, so I gave him an advantage there. So out of all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 things there, height, weight, reach, and all that, there was only one advantage given to someone, and that was to Crawford. Reach matters. Even though Spence is taller, it doesn't matter a whole lot. He doesn't use his height well, and reach does matter. I'm going to hit you from a longer range, period. Now, there were 10 things that I mentioned that I myself just put in underneath as far as what I look at when I'm looking at fighters. It's 10 of the main things I look at. Speed, strength / power. Speed, like I said, strength / power, kind of the same. Agility, stamina, reflexes, offense, defense, versatility, okay, ring generalship, and intelligence. Now, you can use versatility and adaptability, adaptation, whatever you want to say. You can use those things interchangeably. It doesn't matter. The point is, you know what the point is. All right, so when you look at those 10 things that I mentioned, and I compare those guys, and I compare I compare those guys to, like I say, then I decide who I think has the advantage, and I go with that, and I just mark it and move on. So with the speed, strength, agility, stamina, reflexes, offense, defense, versatility, ring generalship, intelligence, I only gave 3 definitive advantages to anyone. And the one and the three that I gave them to, it was not the two of them together. It was only one. Each one went to Crawford. And I gave Crawford definitive edge in speed. I gave him a definitive edge in agility. I gave him a definitive edge in versatility or adaptability or whatever you want to call it, okay? Now, I would have given him a definitive edge in strength and power because I know what he can do. But since I'm not privy to whatever's going on inside the gym with Errol Spence Jr., and they might only show certain aspects, I couldn't be sure of his power. But I was pretty certain that Crawford was definitely stronger, more powerful, which also adds to certain things, okay, when you're dealing with your punch power, okay? And that's important, particularly when you look at things like reach, and athleticism, which we'll get into, agility and all that, okay? So speed, agility, power, and versatility, all that went to Crawford. Everything else I was calling even, okay? Even, or insignificant, okay? Well, when you get up to the numbers above, like the tail of the tape, 5'9", the height, the weight, the reach, and all that, that's kind of insignificant because when they're the same, it's insignificant. Down here at the bottom with the physical attributes, like I say, these are very important. So the advantages all went to Crawford: speed, strength, power, agility, and versatility. Okay. And then I got into the details of who made what types of mistakes. And I'm not going to get into that. All I'm going to do is mention some of the things that I did mention real briefly here. And this is slow motion. I'm going to go from there. I talked about some of the things I talked about were the fact that Errol Spence Jr. has a tendency not to fight at his height and how that can get you in trouble. You can see early on here in round two, that he's already been put down, okay? You saw how wide his stance was when he got knocked down. I'm not going to rewind this. I want to sum this up in another minute or two, okay? But he's already knocked down. Look how wide he is. Look how low he is. I mentioned how he has a tendency to try to run off his combinations, get inside and grab, okay? And kind of reset from there. And here we go. We got the body attack, which we know he's going to do that, okay? He's going to get inside with this guy. And he's going to try to mix it up. Well, guess what? Terence Crawford is very good at counter punching. A lot of guys will say hitting in between punches. Well, that's still a counter punch. You have a counter punch where you will block and return fire, and then you